Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of the Self-Leadership Podcast. We believe that great leadership, be it at work, in life, or elsewhere, really starts with the ability to lead oneself. However, we also know from experience that that's not always an easy thing to do. And that is why we have created this podcast where we invite great minds to share how they go about self-leadership and what their top self-leadership practices are. In today's episode, we are joined by Valeria De Grazia, and she's a product leader. She works in the gaming industry, also has an extensive background in strategy and management consulting. And on top of all of this, what I personally am most impressed by in Valeria, her ability to lead others. She's one of the most powerful and empathetic leaders that I know, and her ability to self-lead keeps inspiring. The intentionality with which she goes through life and the deep reflection that she brings to everything that she touches. So I personally just absolutely cannot wait to dive in and get started.
Hello everybody, and hello Valeria, it's very nice to meet you. Wow, what an introduction. I'm not sure we've had one quite so enthusiastic before. I feel pumped just listening to Anna, so it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's great to be here. I hope I can meet the expectations, and thanks Anna for the intro, and Josh for having me today.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. And so to build on Anna's quick introduction, for those who haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting you or getting to know you in any detail, how would you go about introducing yourself?
Yeah, I think I can use a very visual metaphor just to help. I think of myself as a sort of restless explorer, someone who has been out there many different places, geographical places and business places, and very drawn to change with a very curious mindset. When it comes to the business side of it, I've been through several business dimensions. I've started out in strategic consulting, and I moved slowly to more creative spaces. And I'm in gaming today. It's a very interesting place to be because it's at the crossroad between technology, business, and creativity. So that's a space where I really thrive because there is a lot of space to grow, a lot of space to experiment, and really figuring out the next big thing. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. That's where I am today.
I love that. Thank you, Valeria. And I have a follow-up question, if I may, and that is, do you remember when that amazing image of the curious and restless explorer, when that first came to you, and how?
I think it came from my very first move, geographical move, because when I was 18 years old, I left my home country. I was born and raised in Sicily, Italy, to go out there in the world. Back then it was Milan. It was a very big city, very vibrant, at the same time, very high pressure. Went there to study. And I embraced my explorer kind of image because I literally was a little student with my backpack. And that's many years ago, but it never stopped applying because after a few years, I moved again. Now I'm in Barcelona and still with my backpack of experiences, memories, and lots of interesting insights.
Oh, brilliant. I love that. So an image that's been with you for quite a while now and for in quite a few different episodes of life. And yeah, from everything that I know about you, it just seems incredibly fitting.
Is it still the same backpack?
The backpack is always the same. It has few rips and it has few additions, decorations, mementos here and there. The content is a mix of past, present, and future, which is definitely foreshadowing a few elements of my self leadership. So, yeah, definitely an interesting mix.
Amazing. Amazing. It has some few stories as well as additions, I'm sure. I wanted to also elaborate before we move on around the Restless Explorer. You've talked there about how it applies geographically and, as I interpret it there, quite literally. Does it also apply more abstractly in terms of like your spirit and mind as well?
It does. I've spent most of my recent years out there, changing jobs, switching career, managing others, learning how to lead with intention. And now I think it's a moment of exploring a very different plane, the plane of self, really. So I think it's been an exploration, a very interesting exploration in so many different senses when it comes to myself. And it definitely keeps surprising me, the way to go about it, the way to come back to self after you have spent so much time out there achieving, learning, failing, and succeeding. So, yeah, definitely an interesting journey.
Amazing. Well, that takes us to the now. So having encountered all of those experiences so far, what does self-leadership mean to you?
That's a great question, and I came to the realization that self leadership is more the ability to observe myself nowadays, really coming to a place of observing my fears, my ego, all my patterns with no judgment, with awareness, with responsibility. So really, I'm really holding the space for myself. And it's also about this constant tension I feel between the present and the future, because obviously and this comes more from my business profile and experience. I tend to be very projected in the future, but when it comes to my self leadership, I find that being aware of the present moment, being very grounded, is also very key to really understand where you are and how to leverage what you have in the moment before you can take the leap in the future. So yes, it's a mix between observation, awareness, without forgetting how intertwined our past, present, and future are.
Anna, I feel like that was a conversation we've had several times. It was almost like listening to you in a kindred spirit. Um, a lot of alignment.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I could really sense the depth of your reply and your interpretation, which is so beautiful. And what I'm hearing you say is that there is an element of almost like self witnessing, right? And that self witnessing requires being in the present moment. It can only happen in the here and now. And so there is this strong link where one cannot exist without the other. And to be honest, I've never really picked out exactly those two items as so core to self-leadership and intentionality. And now that we're talking about it, it really seems to fit. So thank you so much for sharing that and bringing that, Valeria.
The question I wanted to follow up on with that, because I couldn't agree more with Anna. And you mentioned that you have a tendency in the work life to go forwards, I think, and then in the self sometimes it's backwards. Like obviously, you're trying to get yourself into the present. Are there times where it is actually useful to spend time in the future? Like if you find yourself there sometimes, are you happy to stay there? Or when you have that train of thought, is it about catching it and coming back to the now? And just trying to understand the balance between the two frames.
Yeah, that's it really depends on the scenario. I think being projected in the future has allowed me to really carve out time for my aspirations, for my dreams, to really believe that something can happen. and then I bring that back to my present and turn it into actions.
Mhm.
But at the same time, being projected in the future is also an exercise of scenario analysis. Oh my God, what's going to happen tomorrow? Am I prepared? Am I equipped to, face or address challenges that are coming on my way? So it really depends. So at times, I'd rather be in the future when it comes to the far, far future, because I really like to think, oh, what I'm imagining is going to come to fruition very soon. I just have to work on it. But some other times when it's about challenges or worst case scenarios, it comes with a dose of dread. So that's not a very happy place to stay. But at the end of the day, it's a fine balancing act.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. How sometimes looking in the future can be incredibly empowering, especially when you then are able to bring it back to the here and now and take deliberate actions that will lead to that future or help bring about that future. And at the same time, God, worst case scenario planning and thinking through is one of my biggest dreads and one of the biggest anxiety rabbit holes that I
Yeah.
sometimes go into. So I agree. It's a double-edged sword. Do you have any tools or any tips that you can share around how to trying to avoid the anxiety rabbit holes whilst taking what you can from looking at the future?
Yes, probably this is the only practice that I've been doing consistently over time. It's more of a mindset, but it really works for me. It's the what I call the experimentation mindset. It's been out there for me, especially at work and the way to approach product and business. But on a personal level, I found a very good way to apply experimentation to my day to day life. It's about taking challenges one little dose at the time and really wondering, oh, is this very challenging moment that I fear really gonna happen? Let's try with a very micro dose of an experiment. And most of the times, when I face a micro challenge and when I break it down, it's far more controllable and it's far more encouraging for me to face. So, experimenting into challenge, into the unknown, into my own fears has been a very good way to test myself out of my day to day comfort zone. And it can take many shapes or form. I found myself testing fear in relationships, for example, in travels, in the relationship with my family, day to day opportunities that really bring me out of the comfort zone without being too far away from it. And as I prove that I can do it by moving baby steps, at the end of the day, I realized, oh, actually, it wasn't meant to be so big. I actually overcame my fear. I proved that I can do it. So it's just a matter of debunking and breaking it down to very small tests that you can take on a daily basis.
Makes sense. How I hear the relationship between all of this so far is you've got a natural tendency to think forward, and so like there is a natural inclination to jump ever so briefly into the future, and that draws some direction for you and some kind of north star compass for you. But actually, then it's about coming back to the now and being as present as you can, and then the experimental mindset enables you to actually just take that initial step towards the future, and so this becomes a really helpful positive cycle for you to dip in, to come back and step forward and repeat. And that process feels, and you used this word earlier and Anna uses it all the time, is that is the process of intentionality in this cycle, if I understood this correctly.
Yeah, exactly. It's about giving myself a framework, giving myself some kindness and forgiveness, because sometimes it's not meant to be that we go from point A to B in one big leap. Sometimes we really need to take our time. We need to take baby steps. We need to fully form our confidence before we can fully form our self-leadership. And the experimentation mindset has been a very good travel companion, going back to the exploration metaphor. So yeah, that's something practical that I take with me every single day.
That makes sense. One of the things that we wanted to do on this podcast was, when we hear these kind of tools and we hear the practices that people share with us, is to not give this glass half full version that it works perfectly all the time and I always do it and it's always great. Like, we know from experience it's not always the case. And so it sounds like this experimental mindset has been great for you, and it's helped you break it down, and it's shown you that actually you have the courage and you have the capability to step forward, and it's not as bad as you think. So I'm going to play devil's advocate intentionally here, and you don't have to share the situation if it's uncomfortable, but has there been a time where you have done this experimental mindset, taken the step forward, and actually you're glad you did because you stepped on a hot coal, and actually it helped you step back before it was too late? So has there been a time where it went wrong, but that was good, I guess is what I'm asking?
Yes, I think so. And I connected immediately with my life a few years ago before I took plane to Barcelona. I was still working in Milan. It was COVID time. And I was really going the extra mile for my work at the time. I was really striving to get a promotion and get into my next chapter. So I was experimenting about getting more responsibilities and see how it feels like before I get the promotion. That was exactly as you say, hitting hot coal. And it gave me a sense of, wait a minute, now that I'm closer to the objective, I'm realizing this is not how I supposed I would feel like getting to my target. So I took a moment to really reflect on what I wanted to do in my career at that time. And a few months later, I was on a plane to Barcelona, joining a completely new industry. So yeah, that was a wake-up call for me. Definitely good one.
That's a great example.
Wow. What a powerful example of experimentation. Not gone wrong at all, right? But gone.
It turned out fine in the end.
Yeah. I guess what I mean by gone wrong in the sense of the experiment did not confirm your hypothesis, and that was probably the single most valuable thing that could have happened, and has given you such crucial information for you to intentionally change the course of your life and be so much happier as a result. Yeah, I love that. And I guess my follow-up question is, when you experiment, would you say it's always proactive? So is it always a matter of, this is where I want to get to, be it in terms of work or family or whichever aspect of life? What is the small first step I can take and play with? Or does it also sometimes happen reactively?
I don't have the energy to always be out there and be proactive and experiment continuously, obviously. Sometimes it comes from outside, unexpected changes, reflection that people trigger in me all of a sudden, and they allow me to really think about things and put myself into doubt, into a zone of doubt. So that's also almost a forced way to think, okay, I have this in front of me. How do I break it down? Even if I don't want to, even if I didn't expect this to happen right now. So it's always, even if it's not proactive, even if it's not desired, at least knowing I have a framework is a good way for me, not to procrastinate, to take action anyway, and to feel still good about myself, because at least There is something I feel like doing right now. I'm not hanging there. I'm not waiting for the decision to be made by others, by time or by randomness. So it's still good. It's still a good companion, even if I'm not 100% in control of it.
Actually, by the sounds of it, especially when you're not, right? Because at least in my experience, often when something hits me left field, it leaves me a bit flustered.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, from what I'm hearing, is you say, hey, your framework works so beautifully for you that it doesn't matter whether you employ it intentionally because you want to move somewhere, or whether you fall back on it because there is an external force that is calling into question something. And having that framework means you then don't just go with whatever comes, or don't just reject it straight away, but you almost like you run it through your own testing machine or testing ground, which is such a cool mix of openness, right? And kind of going with the flow whilst also remaining intentional and somewhat in control.
Yeah, there is almost a magical phrase I coined out of these circumstances, which is, what's the worst that can happen? This this triggers immediately a sort of laboratory, and okay, this is the hypothesis. This is everything that can go wrong. And it's a very good way to demystify everything wrong that can happen but doesn't happen. So whenever I feel like I'm overwhelmed and I need to resort to my framework, I always ask myself, okay, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. I hear you.
I want to say spoken like a true product person, but I don't want to stereotype everybody in that profession. But everyone I've spoken to would have a similar frame of mind in my experience. At this stage, I would usually move us on to the core part of our conversation, which is to explore the 5 most impactful practices on your self-leadership journey. I feel like we've already had one. So either we're going to move on to number 2, or for the first time ever, we're going to have 6. So we'll leave it up to you. But either way, Valeria, let's move on to your 5 leadership practices, if we may.
Absolutely. I think there is a couple of practices are about my surroundings, and something that I think is very, very crucial when it comes to self-leadership is that self-leadership is not about personal growth, but it's about relation and co-creating your constellation of relationships. So I find that co-creating, allowing the space for dialogue with other people, might be my team, might be my friends or family. That's always a very crucial gateway to building and evolving my self-leadership. I have a very practical tip here. And I think it's my relationship with silence while being in a group. I used to go and fill out any pocket of silence being in environment with people, because I really wanted to make the conversation flow, make everyone feel comfortable, and don't feel this kind of dread of dead time. But with time, I figured out that to grow, I always need to allow space for other people to give me a direction, give me a key insight, or just express their way and shape my day-to-day life. So I came to terms with silence, and today a practice that I intentionally do is holding the space for other people, especially the quieter voices in the room. I think this has been reinforcing this practice and being very aware of the silence and getting better at, dealing with silence has been very important for me, because slowly it allowed other voices to come, other very precious enrichments to come to me. So co-creating with people, holding the space for others, and being very conscious of silence is something, is a practice. I would call it a practice I do on a daily basis. And it's been very fruitful, because I've learned that besides leading others or living my self-leadership, I can always make room for others.
And you know what I really like from what you're saying is that it sounds like it's two flies, one stone. So it's, yes, it's creating the space for others to rise and shine and be able to speak, especially for, as you say, those quieter voices. And at the same time, it's allowing yourself to be changed and inspired by others as a practice of growth and ultimately self-leadership. Am I hearing this right?
Yes, yes. It's at the end of the day, it's a virtuous circle, because once you allow silence and space to be there, someone is gonna take them, and they're gonna give back to you much, much more than the space you held for them.
The question I had was, we've probably all been in, like you said, in meeting rooms or events where the natural tendency, more often than not, is what you've described previously, which is to feel the silence. Where did you come across this idea? Like, where did the inspiration for this practice come from?
I think it's connected to the experimentation mindset. And another practice I have, which is my own level of energy. One day during a meeting, I was very aware that my level of energy was very low. So instead of, as usual, feeling silence and bringing something to the surface, I stayed silent. And all of a sudden, unexpected people took the floor, and they triggered very nice discussions and very nice conversations. So I was like, hey, not every time it's on my shoulders. Sometimes people just go with the flow if you just let them. So from that day onwards, I tested it multiple times in multiple environments with my friends, with my family as well. And it gave very, very interesting results.
Brilliant. And you know, Valeria, I'm hearing a lot of benefits in doing this, right? That there's the benefit of being able to release some responsibility and let go of that. There is the benefit of letting others speak. There is the added benefit of being changed by what somebody else says. What would you say is your biggest driver behind practicing this self-leadership practice so religiously?
I think it's very linked to the restless explorer metaphor, and it's curiosity. At the end of the day, there are instances, there are times where I hear myself speaking and I get bored of myself. I want to learn something new. I want to have, I don't know, people giving me a new insight, people giving me inspiration or new ideas. So that's the driver, curiosity.
Can I follow up on that as well? And again, I promise my general outlook is more positive than this, but today I seem to be playing devil's advocate more often than I'd like. But this practice so far, we've discussed it as, I don't know if this is like an English saying or if it translates well, but we talk about like raising the floor versus raising the ceiling. So like this conversation so far about this practice has been raising the ceiling, which is like allowing room for people to grow and meet you up, right? Bring the energy up, bring the conversation up, and we all rise in the situation, and you're challenged and you're invigorated and the energy's great. I've tried this and it doesn't always work. So like, what do you do? How do you recover? How do you handle the emotion if the energy in the room, or if the intention of that room doesn't want to meet you, or doesn't have the interest to meet you there, or the capability to meet you there? Typically I would then feel like deflated or feel flat. Like, how do you handle the energy if it doesn't happen? How do you raise the ceiling for you in that event?
I go back to a place of observation. I try to go back without any judgment. Try to analyze why things are going that direction. Is there anything I can do to course correct or influence the room or the landscape around me? If there is anything I can do, what I do is, okay, I raise my voice and I offer my reflections. I offer a word, an insight. If not, something I say out loud and I voice in every circumstance is, this is going how it's going. Let's let it go. And it is almost like everyone feels less forced to do something to correct some situation or make things work one way or another. Sometimes you have to let go. Sometimes the landscape, the environment, the energy around you is not under your control. It's perfectly fine. It's good to be aware of it, and it's also good to voice it, because people around you can be very empathetic, and they can and they can understand you, and they can really offer support.
I agree that so often just naming the problem, right, or naming the awkwardness, it can take away all of its I don't know, bite, or all of its gravitas. And I also love how you're using curiosity as a way to create a bit of space between yourself and the situation. That in my mind is one of the superpowers of curiosity, is that it allows you to be less embedded in your experience and less caught up in all of the feelings that might come up, and allow you to look at those feelings and be like, ooh, interesting. Why am I feeling this way? Why is this person feeling that way? What's the dynamic?
Yeah, ultimately, it's like turning yourself into a sort of Deus ex machina, because you're looking from above and you're like, don't worry, it's a situation. These too shall pass.
I saw a good one the other day. It was very simple, but they usually are when they stick with me. It was like C instead of B, and that like really like stuck with me. I think that's similar to what you're describing, Anima. Right? You can see the energy, but without getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, let's move on without further ado. So, Valeria, what is your next self-leadership practice?
It is basically the complement to the co-creation with others, and it's really coming to good terms with vulnerability and asking for help. Because obviously, when you are a leader, you tend to give much to the room. You tend to enable others, root for them, contribute to their successes. And most of the times there is this leader figure which is invincible, no need for help, no need to show vulnerability. This is so wrong. I think I came to the conclusion that asking for help and showing vulnerability is very important only recently. I think I've been intentionally asking more for help and showing more my vulnerability only in the last couple of years. And I have to say, I've been just struck by the level of maturity and support of people around me, colleagues, friends, or family. If you ask for help, even if in a very light form or shape, you're going to receive back, because ultimately we don't have to forget that we contribute to people's success, health, and well-being. So there is power in letting others come for you and help you and comfort you and support you. So I really believe that one of the practices we need to demystify a bit more is showing our vulnerability in safe spaces, of course, but it's going to be very enriching, and it's going to give us even more than we think. It's going to give us tools that we probably don't have at that moment. And I found myself very, very surprised. It's not like I'm testing something and I'm validating my hypothesis. It's like I'm throwing a stone out there. What am I gonna get? So it is a place. It is a place of faith. It is a place of surprise. But people can really make the difference if you let them do that. So I think it's a perfect complement to co-creating and giving to others the ability of getting some help back.
One of the biggest challenges I experience with asking for help and allowing myself to receive it is knowing whether it's safe to do so or not in a certain context. And it's something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because if you take that courage, you take that, you have that, you show that courage, you take that leap, you ask for help, and you receive it, that's a beautiful corrective experience, right? However, if you do it, especially as you're starting out, and it falls flat because the person can't hold that space, or they don't want to, or whatever it may be, it can be extra tough, right? Because then not only do you have to sit with the courage and vulnerability that you brought, but you then also have to self-hold and make sure you recover. So my question is, do you have any pointers on how to gauge, hey, this is worth taking a risk on right now, or this may be too high stakes, or this may be too,
Yeah, I think it comes to scanning the space around you. If it's a safe space, if you are surrounded by people that to some extent you can trust, I usually go for it. When there are no red or amber flags, I throw my heart out there, because I know that I can trust these people. I know that we have built something together, personally or professionally. So there is some basis to why it will work. I very rarely go out there in the wild and ask for help, because it's definitely dangerous, and especially if you are at the very beginning of this journey, that for me has been very recent. I've probably started asking more for help or getting more vulnerable in front of people only a couple of years ago. And if my starting point was the wrong one, I would have stopped that practice. So you really have to make sure you have you have a village. In a way, it takes a village, and sometimes you have built that village. So it's a perfect circle.
So you're saying start with those people where there is a deep feeling of trust. Perhaps also what you've implied is start smaller and then gradually build up. It doesn't have to be a 0 to 100 straight away. And what I'm also hearing you say or imply is that make sure that whenever you do go out there, you feel resourceful enough to self-hold if need be.
Absolutely.
I had three thoughts on this. Like, they're not actually questions, because Anna's asked much more thoughtful ones than I could conjure for this. But like, my first thought was, I think the greatest shame, having listened to you there, was my initial reaction was actually, this is a skill like I feel like we have to unlearn. Like, I don't think it's a skill that we're born with. Like, I feel like as children, you don't struggle to ask for help. You don't struggle to ask for support. So like somewhere this changes, and then you have to unlearn it. And like, I feel like that is a grave shame. The second thought I had was that actually it's a little bit like a sneeze, in the sense that if you're able to have the courage to be vulnerable to somebody, in my experience, you do get it back, or you're more likely to get it back from that person. Maybe not immediately, but it does cause that kind of knock-on reaction to other people around you. which leads on to my third point, which you initially framed this practice in a work scenario and from the point of view of a leader, which is obviously pertinent to the topic of this podcast. And actually, I feel like the fear that you described is so natural, but actually the experience is the opposite, in which if you're able to be vulnerable, actually you're often then looked at and revered more as a leader for your ability to be vulnerable. And so like when you like look into those 3 points, it's quite backwards, isn't it? Like that's the simplest summary I feel like I can gain. It's such a backwards human thought process, but so powerful to get right, I think is where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I think this was my experience. I got so reflective about or doubtful about going out there and asking for help. And then one day I just had no other choice. I had to do it. And that is, once you do that, it's a sort of no return back point, because in your mind so many things unlock, and so many resources coming from other people become available to you. You always had them, you just had to unlock them. So once you take the leap, and it might require a lot of time and a lot of courage, but once you do that, there is no way you're going back, because you really understand the power of the network you have, the team you have, or the relationships around you. So I feel like, yes, it takes a lot of courage. It's not obvious. It's not how our brain is wired, but if you take that impossible leap, it's worth it, because it's gonna give you back so much.
And Valeria, say somebody is listening and is thinking, hey, she's got me convinced. Like it sounds like there is a lot of great stuff waiting for me on the other side, but I don't know how to get started. I don't know how can I not? Do you have any pointers in terms of what's the lowest barrier to entry way of starting this practice?
Yeah, I think it can go very casually from a shared coffee, and just saying my energy is not where I want it to be. The space I live in is very contained, and if the person catches the hint, then it's gonna flow super naturally. Then it's gonna be very easy to open up. So, in my view, if you want to get started, you just need to plant a seed. If the person in front of you is oriented to help you, they're gonna catch the hint, they're gonna sow the seed, and the conversation is gonna be very natural from there onwards. Also, in the context of, yo, you have low energy, that's very weird from you, why is that happening? People are gonna wonder why you're giving signals. So I think the closest circle you have is gonna immediately catch something is off. So giving that a name, it can be low energy, it can be anything negative, but not revealing. I think that's going to be a good way to start and test the environment.
That's a brilliant pointer. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really like how it is taking a step forward, it is taking a leap of faith, and yet it's doing so in a very protected, very boundaried way, which sounds like an excellent starting point.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to your penultimate self-leadership practice, Valeria. Let's keep it to 5, just to keep it fair for everybody. So we've had 3 with 2 to go. So what is practice number 4?
It's now I think we can enter a more day-to-day practical tips that I use for my daily routines. And my next practice is about returning to the present moment, because obviously we have spoken about this constant tension between being here, being now versus the future. And I've become more aware of me wandering around in the future scenario, the future ifs. So it's very important for me to find powerful ways to ground myself. and to come back to the present whenever I catch myself just going on my journey, wandering off. One of my practices to get back to the present is the body. So, sports, yoga, or meditation, things I can do being very aware of my physical body are very powerful. In the past, I was connecting physical activity and taking care of the body as something you do for let's say, complying to standards or for health reasons. But actually, for me, it became a sort of ritual. Whenever I do a yoga class or whenever I go and run for an hour, I become more focused on the present moment because I have a machine that I have to intentionally move, my legs, my arms. So this is very empowering, and this is very helpful because it's a very good way for me to detach from the future and really stay grounded in the present moment.
Valeria, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment.
Good.
Please do.
So we obviously there is a lot of talk out there about being present, being in the moment, not getting too caught up with the future, the past, whatever it may be. Some people listening, they might be like, well, I'm kind of done with listening to all of this stuff about being present is so important. What is wrong with me thinking about the future? What is wrong with me thinking about the past? Why is everyone so obsessed with this notion of being present? So with that in mind, what are some real tangible benefits that you get from being present? And why should other people care?
I think something I've realized when I was very detached from the present is that I didn't remember anything of my day. No memory. Every day was just like flowing into the other without anything memorable for me to remember. So out of this, I thought, oh my God, at least I need to finish off my day with something. It can be something very small, like, taking care of my own body, going out there and having a run. But I need to make the day memorable, because otherwise you just find yourself, I don't know, 2 years from the now, and you realize you don't remember what you've been through. And you lose important insight because it's a process. You might want to recall how you survived a situation, how you succeeded and achieved something. So only the present can give you this clarity. And to me, missing out on the present is like missing out on your own party, celebrating yourself on a daily basis. It's very important. And it's the only way you can actually take good care of yourself, making it worth it, making every day worth be lived. So that's what I would say. If you don't live the present, if you don't make it count, you're gonna miss part of the key insights you need to move on. You're gonna fall into the same patterns you want to defy. You're gonna miss some interpretations, some keys to move forward. So it is very important to catch those insights when you are living the moment.
And you don't want to miss your own party.
No, you don't.
Yes, you've got me convinced right there. Thank you for sharing that. The other follow-up trajectory that I wanted to go down is, I really liked what you said about the motivation behind moving your body and how that's evolved for you, how that's gone from, I'm going to exercise in order to look a certain way, in order to feel a certain way physically and health-wise, to something deeper and much more profound, and from what it sounds like, also something that is a lot more intrinsically motivated. So I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey there,
Yeah.
and what sparked that development and evolution.
Absolutely. And it's all about having anchors you can control. Sometimes life is just out of your hands. There are things happening at work, in your family, that are just all over the place. So I felt the need to have a sort of ritual for myself, and I am the one dictating the rules. I am the one scheduling and taking care of the appointment mechanic. And sport is a perfect example of this because it's something I carve out for myself. It's something in my control. It's a place it's a happy place. I can find some refuge. I can find a break from what's going on in my brain and in my surroundings. So that at the end of the day, more than, meeting any body standards or complying with society expectations about healthy living, for me it was the creation of a happy place I could go to, and something very limited that is still in my control despite all the noise going on outside. This gave me the ultimate motivation to find a very, very good discipline about doing this on a continuous basis.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I wanted to follow up, if I could, around the practical side of this. As we discussed in your introduction, you're a busy person. So how do you go around fitting this into a schedule? It sounds like you plan it quite a lot, but I don't want to answer the question for you. But like, what does this actually look like week to week or day to day for you?
Yeah, in fact, this is very open to variety, in the sense that I have to fit it in a busy schedules. Sometimes I do 4 days in a row. Sometimes I go and exercise twice per week. Sometimes I even on a weekend I go into a sort of full immersion and I do yoga for 4 hours straight. So I know, I am aware that I cannot be 100% contained in, oh, I have my 1 hour scheduled every single day. I'm aware of it. It is fine. So as long as I can, I can pursue it on a weekly basis in any shape or form, it's fine. Sometimes, even the act of going outside for a walk, it's very intentional. It's what I can give that day, and it's perfectly fine. I'm not like, oh my God, I cannot give 90 minutes of exercise. I'm not gonna do it. Again, you start from small steps and you honor yourself intentionally. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 4 hours. I take what I can get out of my day.
I would like to be devil's advocate again for a moment. So, earlier you mentioned that it's a happy place. It's a place that you can control, that you can schedule, that gives you refuge. Now, when I think of that place, I think of Netflix. I mean, obviously exaggerating a bit here, but there are easier things to do than to build up a sports routine in order to find refuge. I guess, what motivator can people take or use in order to create a space of refuge for themselves, such as sport, that has a bit of a barrier to entry?
Yes, and I like the way you put it. Obviously, I've been there, doom scrolling, Netflix marathon, of course. I found myself anyway escaping from that, looking at the screen, but wandering with my mind in hundreds of scenario and intrusive thoughts. The reason why, in the first place, I started a more intentional sports practice was to be more aware and grounded into the present. So once you discover the beauty of, oh my God, I have a body, and serving the body gives my mind a break and really forces me to focus on the present moment. Once you discover this power, I think it's a very strong driver, and it's my biggest motivator to build this kind of routine, this kind of practice. And it's interesting when you discover that you actually like it. You are benefiting from it. So I encourage everyone to go up in the curve of, oh my god, I don't want to do that. It's extremely tiring. It requires discipline. I hate it. On the other side of the curve, there is so much to enjoy and so much awareness and finding yourself in a sort of sanctuary that I really cannot go back to Netflix or, yeah, I do that. But when I want to be grounded, I prefer these other way.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And it reminds me of my journey when I started running, that there was this tension between my mind that was like, oh, I don't want to go out, I don't want to put in the effort, and my body, which was aching to get out, to have that movement, to feel more alive. And I think ultimately that resistance, when it's extra loud, is probably a sign that we're still being a lot in our mind, and that there's still some way to go. I'm saying this without any judgment, just as an observation, ways to go towards being more embodied.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think with the doom scrolling and Netflix, it's like a buy cheap, buy twice kind of thing. Like you know in yourself that you might get some like gratification at the time, but it doesn't satisfy truly. So that you're always like the next one or the next episode or the next scroll. Like you get it, but it's not real. And if you do go for the running option or the sport option or whatever it may be, like there's a lasting satisfaction from that goes for hours. You know, like it feels real. I think your body knows in a weird way. Like my mind knows when I'm trying to lie to it or when if it's the right thing.
Yeah, and it's I mean, once you start with awareness and discipline, I think there is no turning back, because it's a virtuous circle once again. You go there, you know you're gonna feel better about yourself, being grounded, being protected from intrusive thoughts, because you really have to focus on that routine, on nailing that yoga position, going upside down. So it's a very fun place to be, and there is much more than the surface of, oh my god, I'm so tired after this exercise.
I completely agree. And that reminds me, Anna, of a conversation we had about, again, this is one of those things that I had as a child that I didn't know because you were a child, so you didn't know until it had gone. Like playing sport was such a good respite for my brain, because when you're playing sport, you can't think about work or what you're having for tea, because there's 11 other people trying to chase you down with a football. So it's kind of like you can only be in the moment. But because I'd never not had it, I couldn't value what it was giving me until I stopped playing. I was like, oh, actually, like in my week, I miss this. Like that stays with me through the week. It's such an important point, and I completely agree.
There is a final thought about, connected to what you just said, which is feeling physically tired. That's the good kind of feeling tired, because we are so often brain tired, we are restless, and we are working a lot with our mind, and we never get a proper night of sleep. So I find that after being in physical pain or after exercising a lot, you can really rest, because it's that kind of being very tired in a healthy way and in a depleting way that can allow your energy to be rebuilt.
Completely agree. Well, we've arrived at your final self-leadership practice, so let's jump straight in.
Awesome. So my final practice is for the lazy people, because obviously we have spoken about building a routine in sports takes discipline, but obviously I'm not the kind of person that can sustain the 5 a.m. routine and journaling every single day. So I don't have time for that. But I found that monitoring my energy with a simple question to myself can really make the difference. I don't know how many people do that, but during the morning while you're sipping your coffee or your tea, do you ever ask yourself what's your level of energy for the day? Because to me, the moment I started wondering, it really changed my orientation, and it really changed my attitude towards the day in front of me, because it's like it's an act of kindness towards yourself. You're asking yourself, okay, what's the level of energy you have for the day? And you actually find yourself thinking, oh, this is actually a question I have to answer. And obviously this is just a question. It doesn't require any investment, any time. It just requires being aware and being in a sort of dialogue with yourself. But I found it very powerful. So every day I ask myself, what's the level of energy I have for the day in front of me, and I try to monitor that conversation. I try to listen to any signal or anything that comes up, and I try to accommodate or flex anything that goes in a direction I cannot sustain. And by asking that question, I find that it's been easier to direct things where they need to be. And it takes 10 seconds, but it really changes your day. So this is for the for the lazy people, but it requires it requires faith. It requires to be at a very good place with your self dialogue as well.
I would change that to not for the lazy people, but for the self-aware and self-compassionate people. And now I can finally say it. This can be one of the moments where Netflix can be brilliant.
I knew you were going to say this. I knew you were going to say this. I was going to say this at the end of Valeria's sentence.
But I feel very strongly about this.
I know.
That sometimes consciously permitting yourself to watch something and to do that and just that, and for that not to have to be productive or beneficial for your health or blah, 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 can be the single most beautiful and impactful thing that you do for yourself.
Absolutely.
And I've got to step on from that, actually. Like, if you are listening to this conversation, or you are someone who is trying to live intentionally and take a step forward, I'd actually got to step on from this, and I've learned this the hard way recently. It is beneficial sometimes to stop and do nothing and let your body rest and give yourself the space, because, I mean, speak for myself, not for anybody else, like, I don't do it enough. And that is part of the issue. Like, sometimes there is a lot of benefit from just solely rest and doing nothing.
Absolutely.
I completely agree. I knew you were going to bring this Netflix up. I was going to say it because I know it's close to your heart, and good for you.
But it's interesting. It's interesting that the way society labels this as guilty pleasures.
Yes.
Because the mantra is being out there, being performative, being productive, but you cannot drive on an empty tank. So
no,
I agree.
Wise words. And what a beautiful inspiration to do a little check-in with ourselves.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like it's a little like let's observe what the state of the art is, or let's observe what the situation is, and then let's plan the day based on that, and not based on an ideal scenario or a should scenario that, more often than not doesn't even come from within.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be black or white. Some days my energy is low, but I don't go back to bed. I lead my meetings more gracefully, leaving more space for other people, delegating more. So there are several shades of gray that the energy can take, and there are so many actions you can take to accommodate your needs and meet you where you are.
You answered my question. That was going to be my question.
It's so simple yet so powerful, and
Yeah.
I guess what I'm wondering is, for somebody who's listening to this and who's like, okay, I want to give this a try, and then they wake up tomorrow and they feel quite low energy, what do they do then?
My suggestion is look at the day, calendar in front of you, and try to bend a bit your appointment, the way you want to carry over a task or a meeting. Little adjustments, like, for example, oh, I have this meeting with my entire team. Do I want to lead this entirely, or do I want to create space for people to step up and lead and co-lead with me? That's a minor adjustment. Or I have to write a 10 pages report. Instead of starting from a blank canvas, is there any topic or any part I feel more strongly prepared that I can start from, and then I can connect the dots? So it's a matter of, small adjustments, but seeing a word on a blank canvas is better than staring at the blank canvas or the screen for hours without being able to achieve anything, because you just cannot get started. Many times it's about finding a smart way and a kind way to get started with things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And if we turn it around and say somebody wakes up tomorrow and feels extra energized, what's the advice for that situation?
That's a brilliant question. I don't remember the last time it happened to me. Unfortunately. No, joking. I think it can go in many directions. I mean, if you're asking yourself the question, why don't challenging more the others around you? Entering some interesting conversation that you are postponing for ages with your friends, with your partner, with your family. If you feel like you can handle hard things, I think it's very good to initiate things that you were postponing and see how it feels like. If you still can stand them, then maybe it is a good idea to start new projects.
I completely agree. And it reminds me of the ABC example that was in my episode. Because I was thinking, when I woke up with that high energy, the thing that I find quite helpful is to bring tasks forward from the future. Because it kind of, I think about it like making space for future days where I have low energy. So if I can bring it forward, and there's a chance that like next week I wake up with low energy and then I've got less to do because I've brought it forward, so I can give myself the space. But to Valeria's point, which is super important, is that you can only do that if you're A, intentional about where you're trying to go anyway, and B, if you're super tapped into how you feel on the given day. So I feel like it's a really good example to like encapsulate the whole cycle that Valeria has discussed in this entire podcast.
Ultimately, it's not a matter of doing more tasks, or protecting yourself from the future future tempests, but it's more about, you probably have more energy to receive. So it's probably also a good chance to hear from the others, being more receptive, growing more on that specific day. So there you go. Receiving more is also part of the picture.
That's a great line. I really like that. So true. So true. And so quickly, we've come to the end. We've completed your 5 self-leadership practices, Valeria. For those who have been frantically taking notes or trying to recall what they can pick up tomorrow, could you just give a really quick recap of the 5 for us?
Of course, we have spoken about the experimentation mindset, which is about dividing anything that scares you in smaller challenges or smaller tests you want to prove. Then we spoke about people, co-creating your self-leadership with others around you and turn it into a growth journey. In complement to this, we spoke about vulnerability and the ability to ask for help when you need it. And finally, we closed down with 2 very practical tips. One is about grounding yourself into the present, using sports as a means to meet your body and your spirit in the present moment. And finally, checking in with yourself every morning. Ask yourself the question, what's my energy level for the day, and how can I make small adjustments to meet myself where I am?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for bringing those 5 to the conversation today. I think one of the things I've really enjoyed about our conversation is that actually all 5 of these practices, I feel like you could in theory do at any point of the day. They don't feel so scary or fixed or daunting. They're things that you can pick up at any point of the day. And I think that's the first for these conversations. I've really enjoyed listening to you today. I hope our listeners have as well. If you have been listening, we hope you have taken some great practical tips to implement on your own self-leadership journey. And so for now, let's put a pin in this, and I'll say, Valeria, thank you so much for your time, your openness, and your honesty today. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
Thank
you so much for having me.